Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we do have news about Attuma and Shuri, some of the arguably weakest champions released anytime recently by Kabam, and unsurprisingly, but still quite encouragingly, both of them are gonna get tune-ups. So now for a while, since people have been asking me what do I think about Attuma, since I do have one, I took mine to rank 3, and truthfully the champion is kind of cool but just underwhelming. He's not quite good enough as a defender and just doesn't have quite enough damage as an attacker for any real competitive game modes. It's probably nice still to use Attuma in, you know, some Act 7, Act 8 questing or some other stuff, but in general he just seemed to be more trouble than he's worth offensively, as far as I did my testing in Battlegrounds and a few other places. And defensively, he just didn't seem that big of a threat. Primarily because the whole, you can't passively, you can't debuff him or he's gonna, you know, get his concussions and all that other stuff. You just block bait a heavy attack and then hit his face. And if you don't really extend the fight to a really big degree, or if you don't use a champion that applies tons of non-damaging debuffs to him, then he's down before he ramps up and there's no much trouble. So, what Kabam thinks of it. Despite some unique utility and tricky defensive abilities, our review at Attuma fight so far has shown that he's underperforming compared to targets in few areas. His defender strength attribute is top tier, but a fairly wide number of champions are having good success against him across the game modes. Offensively, he's also outputting a bit less damage with too little comfort in his loop. Completely agree. We have two specific goals with any changes to Attuma. Increase the defensive threat of his rough Talokan skin and add some damage and accessibility to his attacker loop. Though we are still working on the exact changes that we will let him bring to his full power of Seas to the Battle Realm. Key points of interest are base changed for his rough skin damage. It means he's going to be more Electro-like on defense, which I think is kind of fair enough, unless they overtune it. And the duration of his cruelty passives definitely needed to be increased. And faster access to concussion to enhance the rest of his abilities also would be appreciated. So we'll see how it works out. I think those are promising changes because, yes, the ability-wise, I really like Attuma. I think there is a lot of potential there. It's just that it's not quite good enough. And then looking at Shuri, based on our evaluation of Shuri's performance in the Battle Realm so far, we are also going to look at making some tune-ups to her kit. While Shuri's damage is quite potent once her full ramp-up gets going, we're seeing low damage output across most of our game modes, notably our more dynamic, more complex pieces of content. Absolutely correct. Initially, her damage is just awful. Her damage is good only in like Labyrinth and Abyss, basically. Everything else is just too slow for, which is something that I said immediately since she was released. I even remember having a discussion about this with one of the Kabam devs, and at that point, the rebuttal I had is, yeah, but she has so much unique utility that, you know, it doesn't matter that she starts up slower. It always matters. If a champion's too slow, nothing they do matters in the game. It's just the way it is. Champion always has to meet some sort of base damage threshold if it's to be popular or usable. That's pretty much it. Because realistically, how many of your fights that you do daily are in Abyss or Labyrinth? Like less than 1%. Because in daily you do AQ, you know, story content, side quest, Battlegrounds, Alliance War, stuff like that. And then Abyss and Labyrinth is the content that you're one and done if you do it in the first place. So if a champion that has a decent damage output only in like those two specific pieces of content basically doesn't have a decent damage output in 99% of the content. So Shuri obviously is performing pretty much the weakest. So our goals with Shuri are the following. Reduce the investment needed to reach full ramp up. That's good. Reduce the difficulty of maintaining her shock effects. That's also very, very good and appreciated. We'll be taking a look at her current stack limit, shock effect durations and potencies with the intention of bringing up her base DPS in more complex encounters and simplifying her upkeep once ramped. And I think that what that basically means is that currently Shuri can stack up to 99 shocks of passives and actives and stuff like that. And they can just, let's say, put a cap of 50 on her, but double the potency of those shocks. And then also slightly increase the duration. So the point is going to be to make sure that once you actually get your first level 2, level 1 loop, there's a significantly larger percentage of her max damage present in that, and you do not need to do that loop 4 times to achieve your max damage, basically. So I think that can work as a solution. A champion that is fully ramped up and relatively easy to upkeep with a single level 1, level 2 can work. So we'll see what they exactly do with Shuri, and maybe she is going to be quite potent afterwards. But how is exactly it going to look like? So tune-ups for both characters, as mentioned before. We don't have their changes locked in and are still working on them. However, there is a brief timeline on how this is going to happen. So 38.2, 39.0, Shuri's changes will hit our CCP beta for members to dig into and create content with. And in June, Attuma Shuri released with their new changes. So just a quick reminder here. Next month, so in March, we are getting Hulk buff. Then in April, I believe we are getting Spider-Man buff. Then in May, it's Iceman tune-up. And then June is going to be Attuma and Shuri buffs, but no additional tune-up or buff to an older champion, because this time around they are reworking both of these new champions. So we're not going to get additional kind of buff, because typically, you know, Kabam in most cases doesn't balance the previous champions, but pick a new champion to kind of bring up. This time around, since they're going to have to work on both Attuma and Shuri, they're not doing anything extra. But still, keep in mind that next month we're getting Hulk buff, then Spider-Man buff, then Iceman tune-up, and then it's going to be Shuri and Attuma. Overall, I'm definitely quite happy, and I had a feeling that both of these are going to get tuned up, because they do feel quite significantly underperforming, really. I think Attuma as a defender only really functions when people don't know how to fight him. Similarly with Shuri. And offensively, they just don't. Offensively, they really just don't function. I don't think I have seen a single kind of like viable or impressive screenshot or a fight in a competitive scenario using either one of these two champions. And it's quite clear that people are not hunting for Shuri like they are for Infamous Iron Man, Absorbing Man, Spot, or whatnot in the new featured Crystal, and these two are kind of like at the back of everybody's priority list. And they were on mine as well. Like when I was chasing champions in the new featured 6-star Hero Crystal, these two were the ones that I cared for the least, really. I still wanted them because they're new champions, but I didn't have much expectation on either of them. And even in the Battlegrounds meta that should be supercharging Attuma, that is the long distance relationship one, where you get non-damaging debuffs placed on you in every fight, which should significantly improve your ramp up. Attuma was just not good enough, and I took him out from my deck in like day 1 or day 2. Shuri, on the other hand, still sees some presence in Battlegrounds as a defender, because she's impossible to parry and she does have some miss effects and stuff. But again, still with her minuscule damage, her fights are quite doable. Even if you make 10 mistakes, it's quite likely she can end up healing you up. But yeah, that is pretty much it here. And well, I'm glad that now we know for sure what's happening with Attuma and Shuri. And with that, we're going to have to keep an eye out for the next champions. What is Kabam going to do with them? But for now, let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think that both Shuri and Attuma needed tune-up? Were you happy with them as they are? Are you happy that they are getting tuned up? Or you just don't care? Either way, that is it for today's video, and I'm going to catch you guys soon. See ya. did with. Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the